Hello, everyone. Welcome. Right. Got 1 minute to go time. Hello. Right. Excellent. We've got a chatty bunch, which means that I can probe your ideas later on in the session. Well, it's 10 past, so welcome to my session. My name is Julie, and I'm a collaborating CELTA and Delta trainer with International House Bucharest. I started off my career at IH Bucharest as a mere teacher, and then I moved into teacher training, about 5 years ago, and I have been doing CELTA and Delta sessions ever since. The subject of today's session is teaching grammar, and it's an everlasting subject. We have so much to say about it, because grammar is not a fossil; it's a living thing, and let's say, it evolves just as our methodologies evolves as well. Okay. So let me walk you through the menu of today's session. There we go. We're going to be looking at three things. We're going to explore our beliefs about grammar. And this it stems from beliefs from teachers and beliefs from students as well. What do we think grammar is, and how relevant is it in the communicative English classroom? Then we're going to be getting into the meat of things, which is how to teach grammar, probably the reason why you're here. And lastly, because I think that teaching grammar is not enough, we're going to be looking at how to practice grammar. So that's one of the, let's say, key threads in my session today, that teaching grammar is not enough. We must also help students practice the grammar that they've learned. So let's start with investigating our beliefs about grammar. This is where I'm going to need your help. I have three beliefs. These I've collected from students, from teachers, and I would like you to tell me, to what extent do you agree with this? The first belief is probably one that you expect, and the reason why I suspect you're here. A lot of people, both teachers and students, saying that teaching grammar is tedious and it's dull and it's uninteresting, but it's also a very necessary part of learning a language. The second belief is that the aim of teaching grammar is the expansion of linguistic knowledge. This is about teaching grammar as for its own sake, let's say, yeah? Teaching students what tenses are, teaching students meta language, and so on. And the last one, probably similar to our first statement, is that students need to learn grammar. And they need it because it is required of them. It's in all the course books, it's in the school syllabus, they see it in tests. It's the number one thing that we assess learners on. You know, think about the last exam that you took with a student. You looked out for their ability to produce accurate grammar. Okay? All right. So, have a think. You can share your thoughts or have a think for yourself. Where do you stand on this spectrum? Okay. I'm happy when we get different answers. It means that you will be learning something new. A lot of people saying that we love teaching grammar. Absolutely. And I hope to tap into that love later on. Okay, some partial agreement happening as well. Okay. All right, some partial agreement there as well. It's good because it means that there are different contexts in which these statements are necessary, let's say. Okay. All right. Excellent, guys. So, I'm going to now share with you my views on these three statements, and I hope that they reflect your views, or I hope that it will give you some food for thought. So let's start with the first one, which is teaching grammar is tedious but necessary. I happen to disagree with this, and the reason for that is the following. Most of the times, this is something that we project onto our students, that we think grammar is boring, that we think grammar is dull, but it's still that it's difficult for students, and that we just have to power through it. And just as some of you have said that you love teaching grammar, the same thing applies to students. There are students who love grammar, who love looking at the intricacies of language. Think about yourselves as students of English. I'm the ideal student for a grammar lesson because I like looking at things and working out how they relate to one another. Most of the times, it's not grammar itself that is dull. As I said before, it's like a living organism. It changes with times. It evolves, and we can talk about the changes in English grammar from 20 years ago to today at great length. But the problem in the English language classroom is that often it is the choice of methods or the choice of teaching materials that may be uninspiring both for teachers and for students. And it's a two-pronged attack that we must set. Is thinking about the materials, thinking about the topics that engage our students, and then thinking of the best way to deliver them, to wrap them so that we can make this engaging. And I hope to give you some ideas later on in the session. The second statement, teaching grammar for the sake of grammar. Again, I think the answer here depends very much on the class that we're teaching. I see grammar as two different things depending on the context I am in. The first picture that you have there with my glasses very strategically placed upon a traditional grammar book represents teaching grammar as, let's say, an object of study. If you happen to teach at university level, if your students need to learn about the grammar of the structure of a language in a very structured and academic way, then that is probably the best way for them to have a look at it, to look at grammar as the object of their studies. However, most of us here, I presume, happen to teach in a general English classroom, where grammar is not an object of study, but is a means to an end, and that end is communication. We teach our students grammar because we want them to be better communicators. We want them to be able to translate the ideas in their minds into language that is, let's say, comprehensible to the other person. So in the English language classrooms, in the classrooms that we are teaching in now, I see grammar as a means to an end. And in that sense, there are two definitions that we can give to grammar. We can go with what Thornbury says, that grammar is let's say, a sentence making machine. And this is true especially for those students where the object of their study is the grammar of a language. However, in our English language classrooms, I tend to see grammar as a meaning making machine, a tool that helps our students make good choices about, let's say, the language that they're going to use. So keeping that in mind, the focus from grammar as an object of study to grammar as a tool, I have changed my perspective on what it means to teach grammar in the classroom. And then comes this third statement. I do believe that students need to focus on grammar. Probably not for the reason course books or syllabus tell us to, but still it's an important part of language teaching. And I firmly believe that any teacher can explain grammar. I think that we are eminently ready and trained to do this. This is not a problem. I think that good teachers can clarify and practice grammar. Yeah, so the both of them need to be balanced. And also, the third thing, I believe that great teachers empower students to learn grammar. What does that mean? It means that we need to give our students the tools to help them understand grammar without us necessarily being present there. Okay? Good. So, keeping this in mind, that we are focusing on grammar as a means to an end, keeping in mind that we can get students interested in grammar if we choose the right approach and if we choose the right materials, and keeping in mind that we have to balance clarification and practice, we're going to move on to the second part of our session today, which is how to teach grammar. Let's see. The first thing I want to do again is to investigate your beliefs about teaching grammar. So, when it comes to teaching in general, whether it's grammar or functional language or lexis, or focusing on pronunciation, what do you think? How do students learn best? And how do you encourage your students to learn? All right. If you'd like to share your answers in the chat box, that would be great. All right, a lot of you are on the same page as me, thinking about grammar and clarifying and practicing. Real context, good. Building self-awareness. I like the ideas from Constanza, yes. Okay. Real life situations, personal experiences. Absolutely. Absolutely. Right. Okay. Well, I can see that your principles are similar to my principles, so I would like to share that with you. My principles are the following. I think that students learn by doing tasks, and this is the basics of um, any teaching experience or any learning experience that I try to promote in my classroom. We need to engage students in doing activities. I think that the tasks that we set should be collaborative. Unless it's reading and listening, where we have to, by the nature of the process, we have to decode the information individually. Anything else in the classroom, no matter what kind of task it is, can be done collaboratively. This helps students help each other. It helps us to get a better understanding of what they're struggling with, and it promotes communication ultimately. And just like many of you have said, I think that tasks should be contextualized, and we're going to see what that means exactly. And I think that they should be communicative. And by communicative, I mean real life, in the sense that they have to replicate to a certain extent or to the best of our abilities situations that students will encounter in the real life. And also, what I mean by communicative is you have two people in a conversation. The listener has to be able to have a goal, a reason to listen to the speaker. And that is communication, is when there is an outcome to whatever task that we set them. So, given these three examples, doing tasks collaboratively, and doing tasks which are communicative, let's see what we can do in terms of clarifying grammar. And some of you have already hinted to that in the chat box, I see. The technique that has been the predominant style in communicative language teaching, at least for the past decade or so, is the discovery of grammar, and the guided one, because the students are guided by the task and by the teacher. Open any book, any course book, whether it's for exam practice or whether it's for general English, and you see that the approach that they have towards teaching grammar is a guided discovery approach. And this is what I would like to first investigate. Yes, the CELTA method, someone is saying, yeah, usually taught on the CELTA, part of a bigger range of inductive approaches. So traditionally, the deductive way of teaching grammar was have a look at the rules, and here are some examples. What inductive teaching has done is said, okay, have a look at the examples and work out the rules. And this is what course books do today, if you have a closer look at them. Next, I'm going to investigate how guided discovery works in course books, and then I'm going to present to you my little tweaks to it. So, let's see. The coursebook version of a guided discovery follows the next steps. You have, this is the materials that I've used just from a random coursebook I picked from my library. It's a complete first certificate, so for students preparing for a first certificate exam. And the first thing that our students are asked to do is read and listen, or listen to a text. The example that I have chosen is based on a listening text. It's pretty straightforward. The students are asked to make some predictions based on pictures, and then they listen and match. Classic gist task. The purpose of this is to give practice in listening for gist or for getting a general idea, but also there's a secondary aim, which is to expose the students to the target language embedded in the text or found in the text. The next step is once the students have understood the context or the context, the text, we isolate marker sentences. These are the sentences that contain the target language and are a clear and unambiguous use of whatever target language we're wanting to be teaching. In our book, this is the task that the book suggests. They are given examples from the listening they've just heard, and they are asked to differentiate between present simple and present continuous. The next stage is probably a little bit more useful, is they are asked to match these examples to the uses, to the predetermined uses in the of the present simple and present continuous. And this task can be also expanded with a focus on form and a focus on pronunciation. Generally, course books are pretty good at that, of giving us very detailed exercises to focus on form and pronunciation. Yeah. So this is what's happening in the course books, and this is a solid, tried and tested and true method. It will work and it will yield results. Why will it work? Well, this task, the sort of contextualizing task, well, it works because it puts the language in context. A sin, or let's say a trespass of the deductive teaching approach, was that the examples that were provided were completely decontextualized. They were just meant to illustrate a particular use. They were always sentence level, not text level. And they didn't provide enough clues for the students to be able to work out what the usage was. So it's important in that sense to provide meaningful contexts. Those are texts, whether they are spoken or written, that engage students effectively at the beginning, if you will. Okay. The next part, this is the true sort of guided discovery. It's a task. It's guided in the sense that you are there to help students through it. And the best way to exploit a task like that is to ask students to work on this collaboratively. Get them to do this in pairs or in small groups rather than individually. There are many reasons for doing this. One of them is because it lessens the cognitive overload, and it lessens the frustrations that students feel. They feel like, oh my God, I'm being tested. But if they work together on this, they will be able to help each other out. They will be able to sound out ideas, and it will give you a clearer picture of what they know and what they don't know. And ultimately, I think that talking about grammar is useful for its own sake. It's useful in the fact that it fosters communication, and a lot of recent research has shown that it's a useful communication practice. Norrington Davies, on the shoulder of Ellis and of Swan, argue that allowing students to hypothesize and to think about different usages is good communication practice. So, keeping this in mind, as I said, the course book edition of A Guided Discovery is useful and it will yield good results. However, I'm probably being nitpicky, but I do want to make it better. And here are the problems that I have with what course books have to offer. Remember that the example that I showed you was from a first certificate book. And this first certificate book implies that students are late intermediate, upper intermediate level. And if this is in unit 1, so ultimately I'm thinking to myself, are they actually learning something new, or are they just regurgitating some rules that they've previously been taught? Also, I believe that grammar is a choice. And grammar is a choice of how we put language together to express meaning. So rather than focusing so much on rules and getting students to repeat rules, how many times we go through level, and the same things we say about present simple used for factual stuff, present continuous used for actions happening now. This is language that's been repeated over and over again. And I think that we should try to investigate, as students become more proficient and more confident, investigate reasons why things happen. Because these reasons answer one vital question, which is why the speaker makes the choices about the language that they use. So, this switch from rules to reasons, how do we bring that about? Well, let's go back to our example. Remember this listening? The book offered us suggestions about the guided discovery in the book was about present simple and present continuous. When I listened to the audio and I looked at the transcript, I found something very interesting. One of the speakers actually uses quite a lot of the present perfect continuous. And it's a very good contextualized example of when we use the present perfect continuous in real life. So this, what I'm going to present to you next is a lesson that I did with my FCE class based on the present perfect continuous, using the listening from the course book, but just adapting the guided discovery a little bit more. And this is what I did. Similar to what the book had to offer, I had my marker sentences, my examples, which I then extracted from the text once the students were done with the listening task. And my marker sentences were, it's been great fun, we've all been doing it together, I've been learning a lot about DUI and so on. And then I asked my my CCQs, my concept checking questions, all of the CELTA method, tried and true. But what I have changed is that next to it, I also gave the students this. I gave them the transcript. And I asked one extra question, which is, how do you know? If you tell me that these activities, yes, indeed started in the past, how do you know? Look at the text and tell me. And I get students to show me in the text where the answer is. This, I find that it helps students because it shifts the method it shifts the focus from rules, the rules that they already probably know, to reasons, to investigating the choices that the speaker has made. A simple tweak like this, getting the students to ask why and how do you know, and giving them opportunities to provide to find the contextual clues and provide you with evidence is actually very helpful. Because what I want them eventually to learn are two things. I want them to identify the context, the real life situation in which they could confidently use and accurately use the present perfect continuous. And also, I want to build in them this curiosity and this ability to think critically and analytically. And it's working. Of course, it will require some learner training. Of course, you have to do it over and over again to get students to get used to what you're doing. However, once they get the hang of it, it produces very, very good results. So that's one step, the inquiry phase in the guided discovery. And all I've done is just ask the students why. The easiest thing to do is just take the coursebook edition of the guided discovery task and ask the students why. If you don't have time or you want to be quick about it. If you have time, you can maybe rearrange or rephrase some of the questions in more student-friendly language. I usually find that guided discoveries in course books are often very meta-language heavy, moving into that grammar as an object of study area. So you can make it a little bit more, let's say, student-friendly language-wise. However, this is only one step, and this works for the Julies of the world, the students who are analytical and who like picking things apart. However, it may not work for some students who are more practically oriented, who learn by doing and by producing language. So we have to balance that out. I think the next part, after we've clarified, is to practice grammar. And here is where we see how inextricably linked these two tasks are. In my lesson that I did with my students, my control practice activity was similar to the text that they heard and looked at. And I asked my students a very simple, straightforward question. Fill in the gaps with the correct form of the verb. I asked them to do this together, and I asked them to think of why again. Why did you use the form of the verb? Show me clues, show me ideas. Foolishly, my aim was to practice present perfect continuous. And I thought, they've already seen a model, we've done the clarification stage. Surely they'll be able to hint that this is kind of the verb form that I wanted them to practice. However, one of the students came up with an interesting question, and the question was, he said, so instead of, so we've been keeping busy, he said, are keeping busy. And he asked, this is what I'd say, because it's an action happening now at the moment of speaking or around the moment of speaking. Can I use that? And this led to so much debate and so much actual communication in the classroom that it was very engaging. So my next step was confronted with something like this. I said, okay, I'm going to show you what Julie, said in the interview. These are the verb forms that I used. Talk to your partner. Why did I use these verb forms? So in a sense, I turned my answer key into a task for the students, again, into a discovery task. And this time, instead of discovery of rules, is discovering of reasons. And we had a very nice chat on why Julie, instead of saying we are keeping busy, said we've been keeping busy. and whether or not both forms are okay or not. Remember, this is the lesson was at upper intermediate level, so people preparing for their FCE exam. And once we explored that a little bit, I felt like the students' confidence and ability to use the grammar had increased, or this particular language point. So the next thing I did was pretty simple. They had to interview their partner using the questions from the listening, and I was on the lookout for their uses of present perfect continuous, and this is something that we discussed at the end in a sort of reactive language feedback session. So my approach to things is that when it comes to teaching grammar, we have two stages. We have clarifying grammar, our good old guided discoveries, our CCQs, whether it's from the book or the ones that we design ourselves. Asking students why, how do you know, giving them opportunities to mine the text for information. And then doing practice, where again we use the questions that we asked in our clarification stage to help students understand the language better and to understand perhaps less the rules that they already know, that they've heard a million times, and more the reasons behind it. So for those of you who are teaching online, I propose, we have a little bit more time, so I want to introduce also a flipped discovery of grammar when it comes to practicing. And this is again exploiting the materials and the course books that you have, so that you can help students become a little bit more autonomous. So what you can do is, for example, this is the sort of grammar summary of present perfect simple and present perfect continuous in my course book. What you can do is, ask students to research this before the lesson. They can use the course book. They can go online. You can refer them to YouTube videos. And then during the lesson, what you can do is just do what the book suggests, practicing, but this time completing the tasks and referring to their research. So giving them a chance to do their homework, do their grammar research before the lesson, and then during the lesson focus on the practical aspects and turning our feedback stages, feedback to the gap fills or the freer practices that we set, as teaching opportunities to clarify what the students might have misunderstood. So this is another way in which you can, let's say, make the students a little bit more engaged and autonomous in certain ways. And this is also a nice way of perhaps allowing the students, managing the students better. Because remember, in our lessons, we have the Julie students, the ones who love picking grammar apart, but we also have the practical students who enjoy more practice activities. So in this way, we can better manage both type of students, both more analytical and more practical. I have a very interesting questions from Nick, who said, how can you make sure the students really research this before the lesson? And this is a question I get asked all the time whenever I introduce the flipped version. Well, obviously, there's not much that I can do when it comes to making sure the students do this. However, I build time in the lesson at the beginning where the students kind of share their research. So you know who the students are. You know who's more likely to do the task and who's more likely to slack off. I start off my lesson with a stage where the students share their research, and I'm careful to pair them up. If I know that some of them are have not, I can introduce, like, have another look at this. What things have you found? And it's all about a lot about student practice, and student training, learner training, let's say. But giving them, I've tried this once, I've tried this twice. Normally, there were students who had done the research and students who had not done their research. And then we just took it from there. And then when they saw that I'm going to work on making sure they do their research, they came around quite easily. Well, not quite easily, it took a while, but they finally came around. This is an approach that you can definitely experiment with, see if it works for your classes or not, and you might be surprised with the results that you have. So, to wrap up what we've discussed today, we've looked at the beliefs about grammar, and we've collectively agreed, I think, that grammar in itself, it's not dull as long as it's dealt with in a way that responds to the student's needs. If the students are in a communicative language classroom where their primary goal is to be able to communicate better outside of the classroom, then grammar is a tool, it's a choice. And this is what inspired me to move away from the rules, and try to explore reasons why speakers use the grammar structures that they do. We've also had a look at a more inductive way of teaching grammar. And we've had a look at what we call the guided discovery technique. And you can find this in your course books. As I said before, any course book of the last decade will have their version of a guided discovery. Some of them quite good, some of them decent. And I've also introduced you to another way of exploiting the guided discovery stage, which is by asking why. How do you know? Giving students the chance to mine the context for clues. And I think the most important point that I always try to make is that teaching grammar is not enough. You need to practice grammar, and you need to transform let's say, feedback stages to practice activities into teaching opportunities, and link these two stages together. Okay. So, keeping that in mind, if you have any questions that you would like to ask me about this type of activity, and this type of grammar, let's say, teaching and practicing, I'm happy to hear your thoughts or your impressions on what we presented today. Thank you so much. I really Do hope that what you've learned today inspired you in some way. I have a very nice question from Carmen, who said, "Do you use meta language?" I do. Um, I do use a little bit of meta language, things like form, infinitive, verb, state, all of that. I'm trying to move away from labels. I find that, this is the present simple, this is the present perfect, this is the present continuous. That it's not always that helpful. So I try to focus more on the meaning. Anna has a question about grammar online. Um, Basically, everything that I did, this was actually from a lesson that I taught online. Um, Nothing really changes in the sense that the tasks I set and the collaborative aspect is still the same. It's just a medium that changes. Apart from the flipped version of the classroom. Um, I teach grammar online in the same way that I teach grammar in the classroom. I find it a bit easier sometimes because with these all annotation tools and online whiteboards, it's a little bit easier to highlight things for students. Um, Alice is asking us if do you think students should learn the rules by heart? No, I don't think they should do that. I think that we should revision is a very important part. Um, Obviously, some guidelines are useful, but all of these rules, everything that we teach our students as, or the course books teach us as rules, stem from certain reasons, and I think that's the change that we need to make. Um, Grammar in Constanza's asking us about grammar in writing. Um, well, again, it's really about changing focus on meaning. And when you're faced with a writing task or written text, we have this tendency of kind of being overly corrective about things. But you can sort of prioritize the grammar items that you want to focus on. And again, use these questions. Why? How do you know this? Why did you use this? Why is the best way of, why is this your choice? And take it from there. And as Alice was saying earlier, revision is actually quite important. How many times have you taught, I don't know, the present perfect, and you say, oh, they students don't know the present perfect. I taught it a month ago. Well, without practice, without revising, and when I mean revising, I don't mean revising the rules, I mean giving students opportunities to produce the target language in a real life context. I think that's also very important. And again, this stems from this belief that actually practice activities when it comes to clarifying grammar are more important than the actual teaching part. I think that students learn grammar from each other. And I think that students learn by doing. They don't necessarily learn from tests, they don't necessarily learn from corrections, they learn by practicing. Yes, at the beginning, because they had a whole summer where they haven't really understood any of the or they haven't really practiced any of the target languages that we focused on. Absolutely. I think Liliana's making a very good point that practice and constant revision, especially through collaboration, I cannot emphasize this enough. Turn all your guided discoveries, all of your inquiries to students into collaborative tasks, into pair work and small group work, and you will see very definite changes and positive changes. As I said, talking about grammar, helping each other out, it's valid communication practice. Okay, guys. Before I leave you, I just wanted to share with you, well, my bibliography, so to speak. I used my tasks are taken from Complete First Certificate, but if you're interested in learning more about this switch transition from rules to reasons, I definitely recommend Danny Norrington Davis's book. Okay, and if you want to get in touch, or if you want to find out more things about grammar and methodology, I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and I'm always happy to hear from new people and answer any questions that you may have.